Comedy can be described as the humorous and amusing aspect of a particular subject area. Throughout history, comedy has been used to make light of current situations and poke fun at individuals, stereotypes, and even the establishment. However, in an increasingly politically correct society, can comedy ever cross the line? I'm Tommy Bowyer from Movie Rewind. I'm joined by Matthew Chollerton.
Hi.
And without further ado, let's get into it. So comedy, very broad area, of course. Loads of different types of comedy, stand-up comedy, TV comedy. Today, me and Matthew will be primarily focusing on TV comedy. So if you want to check out stand-up comedy and that, there's plenty of other discussions on that on YouTube. So Matthew, TV comedy, what does it mean to you? Like, what is TV comedy?
TV comedy at the moment doesn't really mean much to me in its current state, but in the past it has done what I've grown up on. I've grown up on a lot of TV comedy, from edgy sitcoms, edgy, drama productions, to like TV shows such as, for example, I grew up on the likes of, funny cartoon shows such as The Simpsons, Family Guy, South Park, to other more live action based comedy programs such as Little Britain, all the way up to even more child-focused content, but which is still classed as TV comedy, the likes of Harry Hill's TV Burp as well. So programs like that I've grown up on in terms of the more edgy side of TV comedy. From a young age, I've pretty much grown up on that sort of stuff.
Yes, I think that's a very good point, because TV comedy, of course, is not just one particular type of comedy. It can branch off into loads of different things. You can have more contemporary comedies such as Have I Got News for You, Mock of the Week, 8 out of 10 Cats, which attempt to poke fun at current affairs and certain situations. You can have sitcoms like Father Ted, Fawlty Towers, things like that, which try and basically just go for their own narrative and their own storylines using characters. You've got animations like The Simpsons and Family Guy. And you even have some things which are just normal life, like You've Been Framed, for example. It just shows a collection of slapstick clips. Now, what would you say, because obviously TV comedy is subjective. Not everyone enjoys the same shows in equal proportion. So, Matthew, what would you say is the kind of TV comedy you're drawn to? Like, what kind of comedy do you really enjoy?
I don't know. The sort of comedy that I really like is, well, it can vary between what I like. I like, more clever comedy. That's more thought through. That's more comedy that's not just cheap and lazy. It's something that, it depends what your sort of views are, but something that at least makes you think, and it's quite thought-provoking and it's quite clever in how they've done it. Sometimes it's comedy that makes you think and also can make you toe the line and makes you think, oh, that sort of comedy that makes your brain properly react, not just cheap, lazy, lousy comedy, which you just sit there just trying to take in and bored. I like the comedy that, well, it depends what sort of mood you're in, but I like the comedy that makes you think, at least.
Yes, I think I understand what you mean. Comedy which is not just a bunch of like not really thought out cheap jokes, which are kind of running with like a gimmick of the time. That, like, for instance, Trump jokes were very popular at one point. Loads of Trump jokes at one stage, and everyone was jumping on the bandwagon. For me, just like you, I prefer comedy programs which seem a bit more timeless, in the sense that you could watch them at any point and they could still be considered relevant. A lot of sitcom programs do that, which I watch. They can be watched at any time and the jokes are still funny because the issues that they poke fun at still make sense today. Although, in the modern world, TV comedy has come under increasing pressure for what is considered funny and comedic and what is considered offensive and not appropriate for a mainstream society. Now, me personally, and we're going to get into the arguments for and against, comedy is subjective. You know, not everyone is going to find comedy, the same type of comedy, funny. However, people just get on with it. They watch what they want. They don't have to watch what they don't like. Now, I've got a couple of examples of here of comedy programs which have come under fire. They've come under fire for different reasons. Some because of the casting involved, some because of the content. However, each one has come under fire. And we're going to start off with one which I think most people will be familiar with, and that is the character of Apu in The Simpsons. Now, this is a character who's appeared in Simpsons near the very beginning and became a very popular character. A lot of his phrases, like "thank you, come again," have become, just as popular as the show itself. He's become a strong secondary character. However, he's been coming under fire for two main reasons. One, that he is played by a white voice actor, and two, that he is a very stereotypical portrayal of a Hindu and a person of Indian heritage. Now, Matthew, your opinion on this, Apu, is he an example of, whitewashing, where white people play characters which they shouldn't be?
Well,
and is he just a stereotype?
To be fair, Simpsons and other comic book shows, animated shows are all pretty much meant to be playing on the idea of stereotypes. Like Homer Simpson, he's your lousy, fat American. Police Wiggum's your typical lazy donut-eating police officer. The whole show plays off stereotypes, and their recent decision to retire the character of Apu in The Simpsons, just shows, straight on the show itself, how, the show is pretty much on its last legs in my opinion. But the fact that they had a non-Indian person portraying an Indian person, I don't disagree with the fact that I do disagree with the fact that they decided to get rid of him, because purely on that fact. The whole idea of acting is meant to be you can transform who you are and essentially be someone else, which is what acting's meant to be. And yes, I sort of understand, because he's not white, so as he's white, he's playing a non-white person, that could be deemed as offensive, but honestly, I don't think it is.
No, I think that's a very good point, in the sense that Simpsons is all about stereotypes. Mr. Burns is like the stereotypical rich guy, uses money to get what he wants and creates influence. So it's very clear that the majority of characters present on The Simpsons are stereotypes in certain ways. Area who portrays or did portray Apu voices Mo, comic book guy, Chief Wiggum. So he voices a lot of Simpsons characters, and if you actually, just by the characters I've mentioned, that shows his range. He can portray a lot of different types of characters. And voice acting is one of those things which they used to say could not be racist, because of course it's about the voice. Yeah. It's not about the colour of a person's skin.
It's not like, they're dressing up, they're doing blackface and anything like that.
No, exactly. And of course, I hate to bring this up, but of course, probably one of the most famous movie villains, Darth Vader, is white. However, he is voiced by a black actor, James Earl Jones, really well. Not because he was black, but because his voice suited that character and has become iconic. And that's much like Apu. Apu, you could say, shares quite a lot of stereotypes of someone with Indian heritage, of a typical convenience store owner. However, if you actually watch episodes of The Simpsons, which I have, which center around Apu, especially during the classic era of Simpsons, they give him a lot of depth and a lot of layers. While he appears as a stereotype at first, the point of The Simpsons is to go deeper and discover, well, actually, he isn't just the stereotype. There is more to it. Yeah. He's a fully fledged out human being. And I think that's what people in these eyes don't see. They don't actually watch the program.
No, they
They
just
just
take
see
things at
that
face
a
value.
white actor is put. Yeah, they just see that a white actor is portraying a coloured
And
character.
to be fair, in
So
the whole space of acting, I completely disagree. Acting is, well, you're portraying someone who's not yourself. Acting and characters you can portray shouldn't be, based off, like the color of your skin, what situation you were born into. It should never be on that. It should be on your ability alone to be able to, act and portray the character really well. We've seen this, with them reversing colors of, traditionally white characters being played by people of color, which I have
mm,
no problem with. Like the Little Mermaid in the live action update, in the live action adaptation, a person of color is playing the Little Mermaid, which it it doesn't bother me as long as they play the character well. But when
yeah,
the roles are traditionally reversed, so example, let's say a character in the comic was originally a person of color played by a white person, there would be all sorts of uproar, which it should
yes,
be, especially on fictional content. It shouldn't matter.
yes. That's a very good point. I think a good example of that is, of course, Samuel Jackson portrays Nick Fury, who in TV shows, and I watched the 90s Spider-Man TV show, Nick Fury is white in that. He was always white. Jackson was cast because he's a fantastic actor and
Yeah.
suited that role. So it shouldn't be about race, it should be your acting capabilities. And especially with animation, it's a lot easier to get past that barrier. Now, is Apu offensive? In some ways, yes. However, um, to people who are really invested in comic books, comic book guy could be considered
Yeah.
offensive. So you could say everyone could be offended by something. It's whether it's just highlighting, oh look, this is what people think these people are like, when they're not like that at all. That's more what the comedy is. Now, of course, I think it also has something to do in this terms of this TV comedy, because Simpsons used to be owned by Fox. And they were under pressure for several years before this with the character Apu. And they did a famous, and I've seen it on YouTube, a famous speech Marge gives Lisa about um, what was funny now and what was funny then and what was funny now, and how you shouldn't judge things. And they got a picture of Apu in the background. And it was like them saying, we're not getting rid of Apu. Now they're owned by Disney. Uh, they've caved in. But as
Mm.
Matthew said, I don't think Simpsons is going to be around for much longer because its best days are past it. And anyway, this leads on to another comedy program which has been under fire since the day it was created. It's another animation and it's called Family Guy. Now, I don't know about Matthew, I'll ask your opinions on this. I would describe Family Guy as a shock comedy in terms of the majority of jokes are there to create, like, oh my god, I can't believe that they just made a joke about that.
Yeah.
And of course, they've come under pressure because of the character of Cleveland Brown, who is portrayed by a white person. Now, not so much about that, Matthew, but what is your opinion on loads of people saying Family Guy should get cancelled because it is way too offensive for modern audiences?
Um, I wouldn't say Family Guy's really offensive, especially now. Like a lot of the jokes and stuff, yes, a lot of them can be hard hitting, and close to reality. A lot of times the jokes are also based in fantasy as well. And a lot of like the gags they do are quite completely over the top, but also based in fantasy. But it's also the left that they want to cancel Family Guy for that. But Family Guy even did an entire episode dedicated to mocking Donald Trump. So,
Yeah.
how far do you go in which direction?
Yes, that's a very good point. Family Guy pokes fun at everything. It doesn't take a political side. I mean, they make so many jokes about Fox being this right wing agenda pushing organization.
Yeah.
So Family Guy pokes fun at everything. It's very easy for people to just point out specific examples out of context and claim that they are racist and offensive. Of course, you have to weigh it up. Family Guy is a show which uses offensive jokes to make people feel shocked and say, "Oh my god, really? That made it onto TV?"
Yeah.
And it's worked. You know, they've made. I think they've made at least 17 seasons now, so it's working for
It's
them.
been going on
I
an
think
awful long time now.
Yes, exactly, and I think that makes a good point that people are, even though people don't watch these comedy programs, they see certain clips and then assume the entire show should be cancelled based off a couple of clips. And I think that's wrong. If you don't watch the show regularly, then you don't necessarily have the right to say that it should be cancelled. However, of course, it's not just modern programs which have been affected by this, because during the events of last year, during the Black Lives Matter movement and all of that, they started digging up loads of previous programs aired, and there was a couple which were pulled. 40 Towers was an episode of that was pulled because in the episode, one of the characters refers to basically he says the N-word about a group of people he's talking about. And of course, I think this is because people miss the point. The joke is that he's a relic of the past and outdated and using word language such as that. That's the joke. The joke isn't that he said it. The joke is that, you know, he shouldn't say it. He doesn't know what he's on about because he's from the past. And I think I think you'd agree with me, Matthew. That's what people miss, how the joke is supposed to be taken.
Yeah, a lot of comedy in general is to point out, yes, you know, people like this exist and they should be made fun of. And it's not like, oh yes, because we're doing a joke about this topic and we're talking about this topic that, you know, we're you know, the you know, the target of the joke is to, you know, be racist or sexist or whatnot. But no, there's a difference between, you know, the target, you know, the aim of the joke and the target. And we've seen it increasingly in how, you know, it's to poke fun and make people think, yes, you know, there's people with these ridiculous, outlandish views, and the fact we can joke about them is to show just how ridiculous and outlandish, you know, this sort of thing is. And, you know, we're not saying, oh yes, this is how everyone should be. It's, no, people like this exist, and make fun of them because it's stupid, and it's, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You got to take it in the context. You can't just assume that because they've used language just like that, they're condoning it and saying, "Oh yeah, it should be used. It's a laughing matter. Don't worry about it." The fact is, they're saying, "Look, it's wrong." But elderly people like that do sometimes use language which you wouldn't consider acceptable today.
No.
Another show which probably had more controversy than 40 Towers because the complete show was taken down from BBC iPlayer, and that was Little Britain.
Yeah.
Now, Little Britain is a show a lot like, it's like a live action Family Guy in terms of what they do for comedy. It's shock orientated, and that pokes fun at every stereotype you can think of. Yeah, you can disabled people, nerds, rich people. It pokes fun at everything.
Yeah.
And of course, this is the one which came under fire most because both David Walliams and Matt Lucas came out and publicly apologized. Philip Schofield said that he feels sick when he sees the blackface stuff in Little Britain now. So everyone's basically jumped on the bandwagon of Little Britain wouldn't be made today. And he's right. Little Britain would not, nowhere near would it be made today or aired, especially on the BBC. No, yeah, exactly. A lot of shows wouldn't. Now, do you think that Little Britain deserves all the hate that you get? Or do you think there's a genuine point of it does cross the line?
No, to be fair, I to this day, I still love Little Britain. Luckily, I have all the box sets, so I can still go back and watch it without needing to worry about what BBC can tell me can or can't watch. It's a show that, you know, pokes fun at so many different things, and it's just you know, Matt Lucas and David Walliams, the genius and like the amount of comedy that they put into it was brilliant. And like even like the likes of their shows like Come Fly With Me as well, which was made only 10 years ago, is still even being criticised. And like, I hate the fact that they're saying, oh yeah, we can't have Little Britain. Why? Because they make fun because they have people of colour, they have people, you know, disabled, people who are, you know, cross-dressing, trans or whatnot. and they're saying, oh yes, because they've made fun of that and done the stereotype of that, like played by two white dudes, and so that can't be allowed, But no, it's comedy in its purest form, and yes, it probably is offensive to some people, but it's meant to be, and it's meant to be thought provoking, and it's meant to, essentially make fun of all their stereotypes in their purest form. I don't get that, and what I really hate is people getting offended and saying, oh yeah, we got to be offended of this because it might offend this group of people, even though personally it doesn't offend you, and you're trying to be like the white knight in his shining armor saying, oh yes, we can't be offended by that. No, like I completely disagree with that.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. It's one of those things where it's a form of dark humor in the sense that you're laughing and you're like, I shouldn't be laughing at this because it's very offensive, but I can't help myself. That's what's funny about it. You're laughing at things which generally are not considered funny. And if you actually look at several of the running gags, they're not offensive to stereotypes. They're actually saying, well, actually, that is like Emily Howard dresses up as a woman, but it's made perfectly clear that actually she's not transitioning or anything, because there's several moments where she behaves just like a man and is offended by the very thing that like males can be cross-dressers and things like that. So that's poked fun at. Andy Pipkin is not offensive to disabled people, I don't think, because it's not that he's disabled. Far from it. It's because he's pretending to be disabled, and he's actually a very able person, and can do things by himself. Yes, exactly. That is the joke. It's the fact that Lou sticks with him, even though it's been proven on like several occasions that he can quite easily survive without him. There's a difference between comedy, which is just offensive. So if a comedian gets up and says, "Oh, all black people are criminals," that's not funny, because that's just an offensive statement. But if you make a joke, if you say all black people, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but if you say, all black people are criminals, apparently, even though that's not true, or something along, it's about how you word a joke. It's not so much that you just say an offensive comment, it's that you make fun of people who have those offensive views. It's you turn it on its head. You don't just shout out a doctrine. If you want to see something like that, go to a BNP meeting or something. If you want to see just racist remarks, the idea of
thing is, like you said in TV shows like that, is when if you're just like, for example, you say like black people blah 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 blah, but if you were to then flip, I found it in a lot of programs, I found it acceptable, especially on these late night talk shows in America where they go like white people and make jokes about like, all white people are this, but if you were to reverse the roles, it would be not allowed. And partly for that I can agree, but at the same time, do you know what really would be beneficial to not offend people and not create a divergence and division between races and political views? Is don't make race an issue. There's no need to do so. Most people understand that racism is wrong. It's just we tailor and try to pander to fringe groups, like small fringe racist groups, which of course aren't allowed, but also like fringe left-wing woke groups that think, oh yeah, because of this tiny small minority, we're going to be an even louder tiny small minority, when the majority of people don't see the world that way.
Yes, that's a very good point. And I think one scene from Little Britain sums it up. It's a scene where they're having this neighborhood watch meeting that this white guy's called, who's this stereotypical former army middle-aged white guy, and he says, "We have a problem," and everyone's saying, "What?" And he says, "There are gypsies in the neighborhood. There was a caravan on your lawn," and they said, "Oh, that's my caravan." So then he gives some things you need to look out for to identify if there's a gypsy, and he says, "You'll have earrings. And this woman says, "I don't think it's right for you to talk about gypsies in this way." And he says, "Okay then, you're very right. Let's not be racist. So you're the filthy gypsy. and I'm the innocent civilized man. Now that isn't poking fun at gypsies. Yes, it's pointing out stereotypical views which some people have at gypsies. What's funny is that you've got this middle-aged man who shares these views, who has these views and thinks that they're correct, even though we all know they're not. The point is, it's more laughing at the man, just like in Faulty Towers. You're laughing at the person that holds them views. You're not laughing at the stereotypical things and saying, "Oh yes, that's correct. You've nailed gypsies on the head." And I think that's what people miss out. And of course, this leads in to another couple of this is TV comedy, but we're gonna discuss comedians for a little bit because I think it is appropriate. Now there are loads of different comedians out there. Probably some of the most offensive are Jimmy Carr, Ricky Gervais, comedians like that were considered very, very offensive.
Even Frankie Boyle
And then
before he went woke.
Exactly, and then Frankie Boyle, and that's it's funny you should say that name, because comedians like Frankie Boyle and Russell Howard have really jumped on to the bandwagon of what is proper and correct comedy and what is offensive and wrong comedy. Now, Russell Howard it's very clear, you can see how Russell Howard has changed. Just watch an episode of Russell Howard's Good News and an episode of the Russell Howard Hour, and you can just see the difference. Now, I don't know about you, Matthew, but I've seen the Russell Howard Hour. I don't like it because I don't think it's comedy.
No.
I think it's trying to push a specific agenda.
No.
Now, have you ever seen Russell Howard's Hour?
It's less about the jokes making fun of what's happening on the TV like how it used to be, to let's look at the news and tell you why the Tories are terrible people, and not actually make a joke about it. It's just, Tories are bad, ha, you should feel bad and awful about yourself. Look at what they're doing, you evil person. But we're comedy programs, like, no you're not. You're trying to push a political agenda when you are hiding behind the fact that your TV show's, a comedy show with an ulterior motive, not to make people laugh, but to try and push your point of view of the world and the political establishment, which the use of comedy is meant to sort of be a form of escape, a form of just, staying back from, all the bad stuff that's happened in the world and just laugh and enjoy yourself, not be forced into the thing where, oh, damn, I voted Tory at the last election. I'm an awful person and can't laugh and have no sense of humour. No.
Comedy is a form of escapism. I often watch comedies if I've had like a day of just doing assessments, so I've had a bad day at work and that. I often put on a comedy program because I don't have to really invest in it as much as I would a film, but it can make me laugh and take my mind off my problems. Yeah, and that's always a good thing. Now, Russell, there's at least 3 videos on Russell Howard's YouTube channel called "Why Trump Isn't a Good President." Now, that isn't really a joke. That's basically agenda pushing. That's saying, here are the arguments of why he's a bad president, or as you said, here's arguments of why the Tories are rubbish. And that's that. It's not really jokes. It's just pushing a specific agenda.
It's like you're meant to be on a comedy show, not Newsnight or Question Time.
Yeah. It's no different to someone at a BNP meeting standing up and saying all of these foreigners and black people are stealing our jobs and everyone's laughing about it.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that is no different to that, because it is not comedy. It's just virtue signaling and trying to push a certain political doctrine. And that leads on to another man who I was actually quite surprised about how woke and PC he has become, and that is Frankie Boyle.
A man who got banned from the BBC for being too offensive. That's telling you something.
Exactly. And in recent years, he's come out and basically said all of the comedy he did before was wrong. It was offensive. It weren't right. And he's now fully conformed to this agenda. He's even said Ricky Gervais is not funny and offensive and shouldn't be allowed to do the jokes he does.
Yeah, it was quite interesting.
Which Gervais didn't really care.
It was quite interesting to see how he turned on Ricky Gervais. Frankie Boyle, someone who's made fun of quite a lot of people. He's made fun about disabled people, people dying of cancer. He's made fun of the Holocaust. He's made fun of all that stuff. And yet he said that Ricky Gervais making a joke about a trans person who, Caitlyn Jenner who transitioned from Bruce Jenner, how he made a joke about, didn't do much for women, how Caitlyn Jenner becoming Caitlyn Jenner didn't do much, did loads for the trans community, and actually praised Caitlyn Jenner for doing loads in the trans community, and just said didn't do a lot for female drivers though, which was understandably. Bruce Jenner, when he was Bruce Jenner, had a car accident, killed someone, and then he made fun of that. But Ricky Gervais focused on the positive thing that she did bring to the trans community, but then made a joke which you would do for any other person. Don't treat them as anything different.
Yeah.
Treat them as just a normal person.
But that's the problem. If you actually, Frankie Boyle has got a show now, which I have seen clips of basically them all say he has always got, not always black comedians, but people of coloured comedians, and they all basically say, "Oh yeah, white people," and it's like it's that kind of comedy. Now, someone saying the joke, saying, well, if you can call it a joke, "Oh yeah, all white people are privileged. You don't understand what we have to go through," and then expecting everyone to laugh. I struggle to understand how that's a joke, because it's not pointing fun at something, and it's not, as the definition of comedy is, a humorous and amusing aspect of a particular subject area. Saying that all white people are privileged and you don't understand what ethnic minorities have to go through, it's not poking fun, or it's not even amusing. If anything, it's quite a serious matter, which too could be taken seriously. And I think that's the problem. They try and take serious topics and expect people to say that's what comedy is. And of course it's not. The point of comedy is to take serious issues and turn them on their head and poke fun at them. That's the basis of comedy shows. That's what TV comedy in the large part is. So I think we can establish that people find offensive. They often find TV shows racist. They have a problem with stereotypes, and they have a particular problem with casting and how that's completed, especially in animation and voice actor programs. Now, we're nearly rounding this video up now. We've talked about all the issues, so I'd like to ask Matthew what his final views are on TV comedy. Can it ever cross the line, and do any of these issues people often have with them, are they ever justified?
The problem is can TV shows ever cross the line? Well, the thing is, we would always say no. There is a line where, there's a distinct difference between, something outright wrong and offensive and something that's a joke. But the thing is, the line is always changing, and then the left-wing woke establishment are always changing where that line is. So you can never be safe, to be fair. That they're always trying to, whatever the agenda is of the day, always will change the line and say, well, this is acceptable to suit our, viewpoints and gender. And that's what I really don't like, is that they feel like, oh yes, because, we have to be accepted in a lovely society, which I think we are making strides towards that. But then I think you're worsening the situation by saying, oh no, we got to completely forget about this, which is when you try and, control history, is when you get the rise of extreme groups, and this is on both sides of, so this is where you could get the rise of the extreme left and the extreme right, which isn't something that's good and want to see. And my biggest gripe is people getting offended on behalf of other groups who said, oh no, you might offend this lot, so you need to not say that. I mean, it's part of my personal reason why I don't like, associating myself with, the politics of, the LGBT community, even though I could say, I'm bisexual, non-binary and all that stuff. And then, but the connotations that come with, the political community and the wokeness, I don't want to do that. I don't want, people to use, my sexuality, gender identity and all that as a form of, pushing a political agenda, especially when you're not
as a weapon, kind of a weapon to use.
I want people to be able to laugh about this stuff. I want to be, like, for example, personally, if someone wants to make fun of me for, how I identify and, sexuality and all that, I would encourage it. In fact, please do. I love the sort of jokes. I love the sort of jokes that poke fun at this stuff. And yeah, I don't know. It's disappointing where life's too short to be miserable, and You got to have fun. You got to enjoy comedy.
Yeah. I think it shows, especially in terms of you, it shows that by saying, oh yeah, people can make fun of this stuff and I'm not bothered by it, it kind of highlights that people don't have to
The
tiptoe
majority
around
of
you in the
people
sense
don't
they
actually
don't,
care.
yeah. Is
Just
people don't
tailor
have to
fringe
tiptoe
groups on
around
both
you.
sides.
They don't have to always think, oh, I better ask Matthew if it's okay to tell this joke because he
Yeah.
might be offended by it, which is, of course, where a lot of problems rise. People are very scared and cautious to say certain things. Now, TV comedy, like all things, is contemporary. It changes as society progresses. Shows like Father Ted, Faulty Towers, Only Fools and Horses probably wouldn't stand a chance of being made now. But you got to do what, as a student of history, what we have to do is we have to look at these things with with knowledge of what was acceptable at the time.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. You can't shine a light of modern ideas on something which was created in the 1980s or even the 1990s. It just does not work because society has not always had
Yeah.
the same values, and what is considered funny has never been the same in any time period throughout history. So I would say, does TV comedy ever cross the line? Sometimes when it is just blatant racism and trying to push a political agenda, that can be on the right, that can also be on the left. So yes, sometimes it can cross the line. However, the majority of the time, in the examples that we have discussed, they poke fun at stereotypes and try to make light of serious topics. That's what they do. That's what they should do, because it highlights that actually people can get along, they can have a laugh. They don't always have to watch a show and just think about political motivations behind it.
Yeah.
Now, it's a strange idea because, of course, political correctness, the rise of cancel culture in many years has led to so many of these programs being pulled or basically bludgeoned, where people say, if you watch these programs, you are a racist and you are homophobic and all of these things, which I think is wrong, because a lot of people who watch these programs feel pressured not to disclose that they watch these programs because people will treat them differently. You'll be excluded from society because you don't share their views. In my opinion, you can watch programs privately and enjoy them, and you can publicly say, I enjoy watching these programs. People can agree and disagree. But the main thing is, when it comes down to it, comedy is subjective, and if you find it funny and it makes light of all the difficult things occurring in your life, then you're not harming anyone.
No.
Just watch your programs. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it. Enough said. So I think that answers our question, what we've said. So I hope you have enjoyed this discussion. We're trying to do more discussions like this with a bit more effort put into it and a bit of prior knowledge. Not that I'm even saying that any of the discussions we did previously were just phoned in. Of course, that is not true. No video goes on this channel without extensive research done before it. So I do hope you enjoyed this. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. Great. Next week I'm releasing an X-Men: The Last Stand movie review. That'll be out on Tuesday. And we're also getting Journey to 2017 released on the 19th of February, which is a video I'm not going to disclose any details of. However, I'm really looking forward to it, and it's a video we've all put a lot of work in, so I hope you enjoy that. I'd like to thank Matthew for joining me for this discussion. His opinions are great. Yep, his opinions are great, and it's always great doing content with him. And we will see you for another discussion. See ya.
Goodbye, everyone. Subscribe to MLC Tech, he's the best.